And welcome back to Handstand Factory with myself, Mikael and Mr.
Emmet Lewis.
Ta-da!
Welcome back to the Handstandcast. This week we have a killer show for you, as usual. Every show is amazing with us, but this one in particular is going to be pretty good. We are going to talk everything involving mindset in handstand training, which we're going to look at everything from training environment to frustration, to fun, to enjoyment, to hating yourself, to boredom at staring at the same piece of floor.
Essentially like the entire
range of emotions you can have related to handstand.
There's a lot more than goes
I think
into
there's
it
emotions that I've experienced in hand balance training that don't actually have names. Like, what's that emotion for? Like, your feet come off the floor in a press, but then you dump it forward.
Yeah.
There's a special emotion there that has never been listed in a emotional handbook.
Yeah,
Is there a handbook for
we need to come up with a new registry for like the levels of annoyance that can occur. Yeah. But I mean, so just to start off talking about the mindset thing, like of course there is what I've registered both with myself and a lot of just the people that tend to be attracted by this practice, because I think that of course not everything fits for everyone, and some people get very fascinated by something. Like, I mean, I'm sure that many of you that listen here are really fascinated and really into handstands, and some of you just maybe want to learn it, just fun skill, or just like looking around to figure out what this is.
Personal challenge as well.
Yeah, a personal challenge and so on. And I'm sure that like if you've at some point in your life spoken about either handstand or some other passion of yours to some people that just have zero understanding or interest whatsoever, they'll just go to, okay. And they show no interest, they show no kind of passion, or they don't even understand what the hell you're so excited about with this thing that you're doing, regardless if that is then handstands or if it's collecting stamps. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, but that basically, like, I think that like there is a tendency, at least for certain people or certain like people with certain interests or so, to be attracted or gravitate towards certain interests.
Yeah, there's a certain, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's hard to put a finger on, but there is a certain type of person who will take handstand as a practice, and it doesn't matter on the exact level, but then just go, this is my thing, and I'm just going to do my thing. And it's the same sort of as you get with someone who's like, I'm going to get really good at this specific video game, or I'm going to learn to sing this specific type of music in this specific style. There's something very narrow focused on it almost. Yeah. Even though the practice itself can be quite broad.
Yeah. And like, of course, you do have, like in everything, you will have people entering into it that are just, I mean, let's say they're like particularly talented, or they just did gymnastics as a child or something. So they kind of have it in their life, and then they decide to continue with it as if it's like not really that much of a choice of kind of a, like, to use a cliched word, kind of a calling or like a very like strong drive. They just kind of have it like, yeah, I am pretty damn good as an acrobat, and I decided to go to circus school because that's kind of fits me. And I know many hand balancers or people that kind of entered into like doing it through that, and that is entirely fine. But then you also have like the type.
Speaking of the hobbyist, I suppose almost the hobbyist type.
Yeah, but they can also be extremely good. But like it's just this difference between, there are some people that I see, especially people that started later in life, that just like they kind of somehow choose handstands as being this like really important thing, and they become ultra obsessed and focused on it. And I'm definitely one of those people. Like, I was not physical as a kid, and I was kind of like, I was always kind of ashamed of being in bad shape and like feeling that like I had no physical qualities kind of. And like, to be completely honest, that's why I started breaking. Like, I started breaking like as a way to be cool. I want, like, if I can do this thing, if I can just fucking fly around there like that guy, I'm going to be badass. I'm going to be someone. This is going to be like create identity, basic like teenager thing. Yeah. And
I definitely relate to that for myself as well.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing for a lot of people. But with handstand, since it is such a repetitive practice, like I find it fascinating in like mindset wise, simply because there are so many both acrobatic and non-acrobatic practices that have that they will build up a skill set, and it'll also take a long time, but very often they feel more rewarding on an earlier stage, because like, let's face it, like it's to just get a normal handstand. If you just are a like completely average physical capacities, have no acrobatic experience, it might take quite a lot of time. And maybe you grind for 6 months, maybe a year, a very consistent practice, and you still can barely stand on 2 arms. You can't do anything quote unquote cool yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like getting a 1-arm handstand is a long project for most people. And even when you can do a straddle 1-arm, which can take like 3 to 4 or 5 years for some people from scratch, and you're still kind of at the kind of a basic level. So it really takes that determined mind.
Yeah,
to kind of
it's
do
almost like a level of resolve as well. I was reading a meditation book recently just on hardcore Buddhist Dharma, but the guy was stressing a point. It was trying to dispel all the nonsense about Buddhism, and he was just going, you have certain meditation techniques and you apply them at a certain stage in your training, and all you need is the resolve to just do the technique and just sit down and go, I'm going to do this specific technique. When I get distracted, I'll go back to it. And it's just kind of idea of just like with handstands, it's just like, I'm just going to do a handstand. I'm just going to keep going till I'm done. And a lot of people, I think they have that kind of resolve that maybe, say from my own sort of training, I had this revelation when I was very teenage that I was never naturally sporty. I was never really into sports as well. I just, I'd go to sports days at school or play rugby and stuff like that when I was younger. It didn't really interest me. And I wasn't good at it naturally, so obviously I was just like, I'm not good at this naturally, why would I bother? But then I had this idea, I was like, hold on, I had this revelation when it came with rollerblading more than anything else. It's like, if I just practice and practice enough, I actually get good at something. And then I was like, oh wait, so then all I have to do is just do the thing, practice. Practice was a very fucking vague concept. It was more just get on the skates and do it.
Yeah.
And then it became like, oh, I'll do it with skateboarding. I wouldn't say I was great at skateboarding, but I could do it as well. And I went back to rollerblading and got even better. But it was this idea that like, oh, it's just that there's a very clear relation. And my resolve is I just go out and skate for an hour every day, 2 hours a day. And then I get good. Yeah. So it was this kind of thing. You see that a lot with the people in handstands, that a lot of people I know who are good at handstands, even up to pro level, aren't the most physically talented people. Like I can think of, even when I was in circus school, there's a lot of the aerialists in the school who came to the school would have been more flexible, stronger, more, say, physically capable, but none of them had the resolve to see the handstand training through. And there's various times you'll see someone go, oh, I'm going to learn a 1-arm. Really good splits, really good shoulders, very strong, very
I've seen
flexible.
this so many times too.
And when you train in a circus environment, if you want to learn a 1-arm, you have all the tools available. Someone will know what's going. Someone will be able to go, oh, this is your sticking point, either a coach or someone who's done it themselves. It's very open sharing environment, so there's no limitation on knowledge. There's no limitation on like problem solving as well, because someone will have encountered your problem. Yeah. But you would see these people and they go, I'm going to learn 1-arm, and 3 weeks later they're just not doing handstands anymore. They're just kicking up every now and then. And it's kind of interesting. It's just like that level of where you'd see people who mightn't be the same physical base substrate, but they go, I'm going to learn this. And then the resolution just like, I'm just going to learn it no matter what. And they get there. Yeah. And then they get better and better and better.
Yeah, it's really this, like, calling it personality type is kind of maybe making a broad stroke, but I think there are certain, like you say, certain traits, certain, like a deep desire to, I have to do this, like personal challenge kind of thing or whatever. Like there is kind of like an internal drive to just get it, and like it makes sense as well, since it's the investment to reward ratio is pretty bad for, in terms of like if you want to have a cool looking trick. I mean, I've taught many people that came to me and it's like, I know this guy. He got it in 6 months. He got to sit 1-arm in 6 months. So I'm gonna do that. I'm like, I'm gonna have it this summer. I was like, yeah, sure, you're gonna have it this summer. Show me. Oh, boom, 2 months passes by. Trains too hard. Told you not to do that. Boom, wrist is wrecked, and comes like, hey, no, blah blah. 6 years pass by. Still no 1-arm. Still barely any handstands involved. So like, while if the guy went like, okay, I'm gonna have a backflip this summer. and be like, yeah, I'm gonna have it. Like he probably
Yeah,
would have
most
gotten
people,
that. Yeah, like if he
regardless
went
where
to a
they start.
gymnastics club or like had some mats or whatever, he probably would have that backflip to summer, and that would have kind of been it with that. And let's say maybe that person then would be interested in acrobatics and like do loads of flips and stuff. And of course, all these things are also really difficult, but on a different level. And you can kind of, say you start out tricking or like basic tumbling acrobatics, you have at least a few things you kind of get early on. Like you won't get like your round off back handspring full twist quickly, but there's like loads of like small stepping stones, and
You'll
you'll
have things that
there
will
few.
impress people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's one of the things with handstand. If you start out like, I have no handstand and I've never really trained, I don't know, 6 months go past, you still will have not anything that's impressive. If you've done tumbling, in 6 months' time, you'll be able to do something where someone will go, okay, that's cool. Either a side flip, a back flip,
Exactly.
cartwheel, no hand cartwheel. You know, if you have a structured practice, whereas handstand is just like
Nothing might happen in that time.
yeah, but it's an interesting case of passion, but not too strong passion, I think, as well. Where you'll see, if people are too passionate, you see this all the time, where they just train too much and then they blow themselves up. And it's kind of like, you see it particularly when things begin to start working, the passion starts going, and they're like, I want to do more and more.
Yeah, and then like you wreck a wrist or you wreck a shoulder.
Yeah, we've
it's
all
classic.
been guilty of this
Yeah,
at some stage.
for sure. Me definitely so much. But like you say, that there is something there too, like this about being able to do something cool. And I think that most people that will try to deny to themselves that they don't. Yeah, I don't want to do something cool. You're likely lying to yourself or lying to others, because like it's not a bad thing. Like when I look back on my practice, like because there is a very like, how to say, it's a very trendy thing to say that, yeah, you know, my practice is for me and I don't do this for others and blah blah blah, all this kind of like basic like Hollywood fucking life wisdom, quote unquote, that about that, like you shouldn't really care about others. Of course you should care about others. We're social beings, like we're flock animals, and we care what other people care about, and like these things are expression of that to some level of other. And what I find interesting, like if you like kind of relating it back to more like Eastern philosophies and stuff like that like yes, there is a point where your practice becomes more important than impressing others or making an impression or doing something that will kind of, because like if you look at it anthropologically, like what you're doing is you're doing something within a system and you want to achieve value. Like the one-arm handstand is a signifier for value. I have achieved this level of value, and people will respect me for that, and more importantly, I will respect me for that. So there's a lot of these things, but I think that like this with like philosophy around the fact that like at one point I think that like it starts growing where the practice itself, like you've done it for like a long time, you maybe experienced like getting kind of that recognition. And for me that was like a thing. It's like suddenly I was standing there on stage in front of hundreds and hundreds of people each day and like taking the applause and yay, and then you kind of see like, yeah, that's cool, but it's also kind of hollow. And like that's where it came to me, like the question, okay, I've kind of gotten this recognition that I searched for first through kind of karate, then breaking, and then like circus. I kind of felt like I made it. And then you stand there and like, okay, do I kind of just go home and chill it because I'm good enough? And that's a valid choice. But I kept on practicing, and I would see that like over time, but it's the practice started being more important. And that's not saying that I don't think I still think it's nice if people like what I do. It's just there is a larger percentage that keeps me going. Like when I'm home for Christmas, I go on fucking New Year's Eve and like Christmas Day and stuff to the training hall when I can, and I enjoy myself. It's kind of, it's something in there, but it takes time to get to.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So I just to divulge slightly, I'm part of a system of Taoism trained by Sir Augier, but we have this concept in the school of your practice, you're building a temple. And when you start doing your practice, has to be special for a certain reason. So it's say meditation, you have to get some nice incense and get a nice cushion, and then you'll set up in a nice spot, always in the same spot, and you're slowly building this temple But then as you get more and more into the practice, you realize the building is kind of irrelevant, and it's just the practice. What happens inside it is the more important thing. So this is kind of the stage you get to. You built your practice up. You have made the really nice tempo, like you're saying. Oh, I was in front of the crowd. I was getting recognized for my skill. But then you realize, okay, they're applauding the temple. Whereas for you, it's the more important thing is what goes on inside it. So it's that kind of thing. It's like
it's funny how it's kind of backwards too.
Yeah.
Like you need to come to a point like I don't think it needs to be recognition, but I think it needs to come to this point where like, okay, you've started to know yourself through this practice, and you'll kind of see over time, okay, but actually is this actually what I do? Because like one of my favorite interviews with Rodney Mullen, if you don't know him, he's basically possibly the most influential skateboarder in history. I don't skateboard, but
skateboarding.
Yeah, he basically created a lot of vocabulary, and he's a really, really intelligent guy. And he talks about this, and it's interesting to hear him talk about exactly that, because I don't think I know of practically anyone that can say these words with such kind of weight as he can. Because I mean, the guy won literally, I think he won 34 out of 35 contests he ever entered. He literally created most of kind of the modern skateboarding
he's still like
style.
He's done tricks like to this day that other people can't replicate.
Yeah, exactly. So like, or he didn't create the style, but at least like he was extremely influential. But then he just keeps talking about, like in that interview, he just says that, hey, yeah, but I'm gonna go out to skate tonight. And like this guy that he's like in his 50s, he's kind of done everything, and he just found that like more and more after, like he threw away all these trophies, he said, because like they didn't represent actually what he wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
And I think like those kind of things like take time to build, and I'm still kind of like, it's all kind of a continuum of things, I think. But yeah, like to bring it back a little bit to that with the personality types, I think there are personality types that search for something, and then like hand balancing, it's an easy target for these kind of people because it's physical. It's a lot about meditation, and like it in the sense that like you need to really focus on the moment. You can't really be anywhere else. As you kind of focus on the balance, you fall. And another thing I think was really, really interesting that I thought of, and that was once when I worked in Knitting Peace with Circus Circör. It's a show I was part of for 3 years. We had like an extremely heavy tour period, and I was dead tired. I had super like sleeping problems because we played shows and we've done at like 10 o'clock, like ultra pumped adrenaline at 10 o'clock each night, and then ate food. Then like the food kicks in at 12 o'clock, and there you are until 4 a.m. in the morning. And this would go on for months.
The show problem. That's when you start like drinking. And that's what people have with alcohol problems in circus.
Yeah, and like basically, so the company just got us in touch with this like sports doctor. Like he was a general practitioner, but he was used to working with athletes. So I meet him, and he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna like. He was like, I just want to hear about you, he says. And okay, fair, that sounds cool. So we just discussed back and forth.
Yeah.
About like the training, and then I said to him like, yeah, hand balancing is. I guess we'll come into this topic as we speak, but he said that, like I said, hand balancing is just like such a thing where like it always feels like fresh meat, and you never know if you're going to manage. You come in there and you kind of need, as if you need to test yourself each day. If you take days off, you feel off, and then he said just like, and I said like, yeah, it's like almost as if you need to prove this to yourself whether or not it works. And he just says like, a need for control, he said, and I was like, that's right, you fucking nailed it. And I think there is something there because it's such a test of control each time. Yeah. Like it feels precious in that sense that like if you go towards the kind of limit of your vocabulary, or like where you're trying to kind of master that next whatever the step is, your control literally is tested, and it's kind of physicalized and kind of your mental state, and there's so many things going into that. And that's also why I think it's easy to kind of get like emotionally attached to these things too, because like you put so much of yourself into this. Like I manage, I feel like a good person. I didn't manage, I feel like a bad person, kind of thing. And I think that can also become rather toxic for people if you kind of spiral too much out of control.
It's definitely one of these things where it's like hand balance. There's few disciplines that actually train the three bodies. So with three bodies in the classic sort of sense would be physical, emotional, and mental. And you mentally have to understand the trick you're doing and exert this control. but you need a level of conscious absorption into your own body where you're actually able to feel your body in space. This could be at a subconscious level, but you have to actually be able to challenge your proprioception of the space and actually be able to feel it. And then at the same time, you're also dealing with, on a very basic level, success or failure.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, I was going to kick up and do a 15-second 2-arm handstand, and I've done 14 seconds, and now you have set something that will cause either, oh, I've done 16 seconds, great, I feel good. Oh, I've done 14 seconds, oh, I've failed what I've set to do. So you're dealing with like the three bodies at once, which is an interesting thing. It's also, you know, the gateway into meditation in some ways. So it's kind of, not to say it is a meditation practice, or it could be, or it couldn't be, but it's this interesting thing that it's always this idea in circus that we're dealing with risk. We're proposing a challenge. We're dealing, okay, this is the risk I'm going to attempt. Take a look at it. But in hand balance and a lot of the other stuff, it's a personal, like, any kind of flaw is very immediately punished. Whereas, like, say aerial, like I've dabbled in a bit of aerial over the years, and like you go up on a quarter lease and you're going to do a drop, and you miswind the rope and it's out by 5 centimeters. You fall down. Nothing happens. You're still. It might hurt a bit more. It might like get a bruise on a bit of your skin that isn't conditioned, but you still achieve what you set to do. Whereas hand balance, like you squeeze the fingertips just a bit too hard, you push yourself off your own balance point. So
it's funny with that too, because hand balancing is also one of the least risky in one sense in terms of like physical danger. Like if you jump on the trampoline and you make a severe mistake, you can die, or you can be paralyzed or break things. While hand balancing is like, it's funny that like it's so easy to take it so personal.
Yeah.
Whereas if you mess up the flip on the trampoline, like it just seems like people, maybe it's also because I've never done those disciplines, but it seems just that it's with hand balancing, it's I guess it's so much also because it's all you, and you're so present in each and every moment of what's going on. I mean, if I do like, let's say breakdancing power moves, when you spin around and you mess it up, okay, it doesn't feel good either, but like you're kind of in this like fast roll, this fast motion, and like the experience of the failure kind of feels different than this like you're doing a like almost one arm, I think I'm getting it,
it's that kind of like it's that idea of like you have an idea of the feeling that would be achieved by the movement, and your ego has set the challenge of like, I must do it, and then you think you're doing it, and then when you fail it, it can be almost like a smack to the ego, in like using the ego on a kind of broader, the bigger ego of things. This thing, it's like, it's very interesting. It's also like this idea of like, just touching on the risk idea again. I remember I'd done a weekend workshop with the director from Arc Chaos, and the name eludes me right at the moment. And he was talking to
Arc
the
Chaos
workshop.
is a French circus company.
Yeah, French circus company. They were very famous at like, as around this time when Cirque got big, Cirque du Soleil got big. They were very famous for doing very shows that were like chaotic, and like people who were going into the shows were just like, we weren't sure we were going to come out alive. It was just like circus as had never been done before. But the topic of the workshop was risk. One of the points he made was like, aerialists used to be the riskiest thing in circus. Like people, you know, performing trapeze with no nets and no crash mats and improper technique and all this. And this is what caused the wow. But you were saying then hand balancers and jugglers are now the people who deal with risk and control the most. But the audience doesn't get it, because when your hand balance act goes good, it just looks too easy. When your juggling act goes good, you don't drop it, just you look in control. Whereas it's kind of like this outside calm, inside turmoil. So it's I always find that quite interesting. It's like, okay, and that inside turmoil, because you get the same type of personalities do very well at juggling as well as hand balance. It's quite a I've heard that discussed also, that there's like a similarity in like the extreme repetitiveness of doing the same thing and getting like the progress being very slow, and like also like the approach being very kind of methodical. You're dealing with, I mean, juggling, you're dealing with numbers. Like handstands, you kind of also like, I held it for 10 seconds. That isn't like as relevant in very many other
disciplines, or like it might be relevant but not like for each and everything like it is in handstands. Everything is about like, okay, how long did I keep this control, or like whatever. And I think that is also what leads into that like very frustrating stage of it. And like I can tell you, I've been of the worst. Like I'm seldom as frustrated nowadays as I used to be, partly because I'm older and more jaded, and and just like, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, you've basically gone through enough experiences to see like, oh yeah, this is how it is. I've been this frustrated before. It didn't lead to anything good then, and so on and so on. But I mean, anyone can have a bad day, and occasionally I can flip out too. It is what it is.
Occasionally he flips out.
Yeah, like, but the thing is that it's rather rare at the moment, and it's kind of like I don't think it's any point to kind of like well up the emotions either. Yeah, sometimes you just have a shitty day, and then it's fine. But like what I used to do as well, like I used to kind of rage, and like people around me got annoyed because like, okay, but you I'm training over here, and there's a person over there like being really angry at some shit. And then like after like facing the consequences of that, I was like, fuck, but I can't do this anymore. So I like literally, after I was working and saw, okay, this doesn't work anymore, and I just like literally just made the snap decision.
Suppress the emotions.
Yeah, but not even just like basically going like, okay, but there isn't any point. So just like not letting kind of just any kind of annoyance like bring out a reaction, because there isn't really much point of making a reaction. But it's I think these kinds of things, whether it's now handstands or anything else, where you put a lot of identity and personality into, and like you I believe I think it's a good thing to put a lot of yourself into something. And yes, when you fail, it feels really bad, but at least you're really going for it. And that's at least something that I value. But and then you kind of need to accept the thing that comes with that. Yes, if you have that shit day and everything goes garbage, yeah, you're going to feel pretty damn bad, but it's okay. It is what it is. And over time, you'll just learn to kind of process that better. But
so that kind of leads just to segue into another topic. It kind of leads into the idea of a training environment. I think this is a big thing, particularly for hand balance. I'm noticing this a lot at the moment with my own training. I've like made a thing. I took a break from training acrobatics for 4 years just to focus on other stuff, but I've come back to train hand balance, and I'm now training in a commercial gym in Dublin. And one of the things that was getting to me is like, it causes me to rage quit the gym a lot of times when like people are just doing stupid shit around me. I have a very low tolerance for stupidity.
Oh, like that guy yesterday who was screaming at the class. Oh,
yeah, I wanted like that stuff. And that, like, you know, two people skipping beside you, offbeat with the music and offbeat with each other. Boom, I'm out of there. Someone like lying down on the floor, and I don't know what they're doing, but it kind of looks like, I don't know, some kind of sex positions exteriorized in weightlifting, but non-erotically. I'm out of there. The music is Marvin Gaye, I heard it through the grapevine remix, but there's 4 different variations of remixes on the same playlist that just keep going on loop.
Yeah,
boom, I'm out of there. But it's that kind of idea of like, so it's pretty extreme. It's a commercial gym. It's not the best situation, but even when you're in certain training spaces, like it can have an effect on you. You remember, like just as you touched on, like, you know, I used to rage a lot, but I had that experience as well when I was training in circus space. It was, you know, I'd be juggling or doing whatever, and that would get me fucking angry. I'd identify with it, and then just like throw all my props against the wall and fucking smash them around, storm around the room. And it was kind of okay because the space was so big, but no one gave a damn, and other people would be doing it because like you're all fucking 20-year-olds and like can't control your shit. But then it's like, as you're saying, you're getting in a more professional environment, and suddenly like, you know, throwing your shoe across the room in rage isn't a professional option.
Yeah, then you're gonna hear it. Basically. So. Yeah, but I think it's like, it's interesting also that the kind of environment thing, since it's a very lonely kind of discipline in one sense.
Yeah.
It's you and the floor, and it's you and you, and it's kind of almost, how to say, selfish in a sense. Like if you compare it to like hand to hand, where you're always relating to another person, you're always like, there's always, or like team play, where it's like you're always part of a group. Here it's kind of like you're like basically an antisocial, like just it's me and the hand and the shoulder, and I am going to stand with my legs in this position and I'm going to do this, and that is all that matters for me, like in terms of like my quality of life today, kind of like mindset. And I've seen that a lot. Like personally, when I train, like sometimes I absolutely love to train alone. I often go on like Saturdays and Sundays and just stuff, just okay, I'm perfectly alone and just do my thing. But also I like to have others around me. And sometimes when I see people do handstands, like they're next to me and doing handstands and they put in like earphones, I'm just like, oh, okay, fair enough. I get it because it's this kind of practice, but I also like it more when it's just like, okay, we're just hanging out together and just like chit chat and nonsense. And then I do some handstands, you do some handstands, chit chat and stuff like that. And I think,
I get what you mean there. It's kind of like there's a level of like things that are just reassuring about having someone's presence in the room doing the same thing. And like it's the same thing like you're doing sort of training in say circus environments or ones that are a bit more, I suppose, movement gyms and gyms that are a bit more open to these things, where you may not be having a direct conversation with the person, but you kind of there's a level of acknowledgement and witnessing for what you're doing.
Yeah.
And like occasionally, you know, you'll hit a good set or something new, and that person, if they know what you're training, will be like, I seen that, awesome. Or they'll see that you're happy with what you're doing, and they might know what you've done, but you come down, you'll be smiling, and like, oh, new PR or something just clicked, and they're like, oh, that was awesome, and that kind of thing. And it's kind of a two-way thing, and it's a weird kind of like, it's not like a team sport, and it's not like we're in this together, and it's not like, you know, oh, we're all thing, but it's still this kind of
being able to be happy for the other person's achievement. A
bit of empathy. And
I think that's also really important, and something that I really want to cultivate with training. It's like I don't think I'm not such a happy, I'm in general not so happy about competition and these kind of things, so like I find it nicer if people can enjoy together and share and just have a good time. And especially since, I mean, it's circus, so, or even if you do this and you're not a circus artist, it's like, because that is also leads me to think about the kind of the judgmental attitude, as we talked about, like I judge myself very hard if I manage or not, that kind of thing, and that also leads to kind of the community. It leads to the kind of the thoughts about like what is right, what is wrong, and it's very easy to be very judgmental. Oh, but yeah, well, that guy doesn't have a straight handstand, and as if that is kind of like derogatory. But like, does it matter? Like if a person has a lot of fun, then that should be kind of the primary thing. Sure, if you're going to an audition for a circus company and it might be like you might get the job if you do a good job, sure, yeah, then like present your best shit. But like it's also nice to kind of like create a good atmosphere around these things, and I think it's also healthy, just since again it is a very obsessive practice. It attracts people that are very obsessive about it, so like being able to kind of build a good mental state around the practice just makes it on average so that you'll have like more fun with it, basically.
One of these things, like if you're working in a group, I suppose you don't want to reinforce the obsessiveness to the nth degree. Like we look at, like, it's also like you got to remember there is the shifting baselines as well of like people's toe point. So like toe point was a thing, you know, if you can get your foot straight was fine, and then it becomes like, oh no, wait, you need like the claw, as it's known in the business, whereas like your toe point doesn't go straight, it goes like beyond straight.
Yeah, it's like a crow.
And that's the new baseline. And if you don't have this baseline, and like most people, if they're into their practice and they're kind of filming and self-assessing, will get like they already know a lot of the details that are wrong, and then if people are picking up on them and reinforcing them, they're like, no, it is not a good handstand if it's not like this. I remember one of the guys, one of the handbalancers, was in uni with me. I think his toe point was just bad. He was really flexible. You know what I'm talking about. I just want to name names. Really flexible, really good hands, learned handstand really quickly. His toe point wasn't great, and he spent ages. Wasn't great by his own standards. It was perfectly fine. Like I remember him talking to me one day. He's like, oh, "But your toe point is fine." I'd never even noticed the toe point was bad. But then I get a bit dumb to these things. And he was just talking about it. He was like asking me some stretching advice on how to do it, and he spent ages battering his toe point. He had like people standing on his toes every day. they made some blocks of wood in a certain shape to kind of like basically do Chinese foot binding. And eventually the physio was like at the school, we just sent him for an x-ray, just like, let's see what's going on there. He had this a bone, he had an extra bone in his ankle, which is a common thing. It's like when one of the growth plates doesn't fuse, and just like there's no way his foot was going to point straight. It's just like a bony limit. But because he had picked on this detail, he was a bit obsessive and he couldn't get it to work. It was caused a lot of mental frustration for about 2 years before this was picked up on.
Yeah, I've had like similar types of experiences where you just like you get pointed out a certain detail and then that's all you can see. And yeah, I think again, since people do these things, then they're very aware of everything that's going on, aware of the aesthetics and all that. Like it becomes so obvious when things aren't exactly like it should be. And this kind of like brings me a little bit to think about like the internet of like has also led a lot to this, where there is like a very, I mean, if you read on various like handstand groups and like things around the internet, there's like just such an obsession on things needing to be perfect, and everyone's ready to tell you that, oh yeah, but you can do this bit more and like this and a bit more like that, and everyone treating like there's this constant talk about, oh yeah, I know it's not so good, but do you have any advice for maybe it can be a better it's good. I mean, I'm all for like try to do it the best you can, but like if this is detrimental to the on average enjoyment of what you're doing, then I think it's important to reassess like exactly what we're talking about, the mindset around the practice, because you'll just ruin more for yourself than you need to. And I'm also speaking from experience for this, because I used to just waste a lot of time just getting annoyed by things that just don't help. It helped me in zero ways. And like it's very important to be able to just take a step back and say, oh yeah, that's actually quite fun to stand in my hands. Oh hey, it looks pretty cool. I like this kind of thing. Yeah. And
you gotta forget, like once you're like okay at handstands, once you can do like all the basic shapes and press and something, you're in a very small percentage group in the world.
Yeah.
Like you just do have to bear that in mind. It's like, yes, we are very cliquey and we do kind of stick together, but all in all, like, you know, once you can stall their press to someone, or once you can stall their press to handstand, you're someone.
Yeah.
Like, you know, well, in that kind of thing, like obviously it doesn't seem like a big thing to us who are into it, but there's not a lot of people out there who could or could ever.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads to one of the things we kind of touched on, I suppose, the negative sides of group, but what about the positive sides of training groups? There's like, depending on who your peers are, and it even comes down to an attitude thing, like it can really boost the level and kind of like act like a force multiplier. Like it's that idea that it's so common that you see this a lot in object manipulation as well, just to segue slightly into that, where you'll see certain groups of people who are kind of slightly isolated from others, but it becomes the norm to get ridiculously good at a certain subset of object manipulation, whatever, ball juggling, ring juggling, specific types in this, and they come around, then they burst onto the scene with a video or a promo going like, we have basically just invented a new genre or subgenre of this. And you kind of see that a bit in hand balance as well. It's like it's one of the things I put down to the Kiev school. The Kiev school of hand balance, they're ridiculously good, very resolute, very, very determined. But when I was talking to some of my students I've trained there, I know a few other people who've trained over the years there, when you talk about what they're doing technique-wise and the technical advice, it's good, but there's other coaches out there in other circuit schools who would give people the exact same advice.
Yeah,
like it's it's as good as it comes, but the techniques have been disseminated everywhere. But you still see consistently there's like groups, and there's even subgroups who come out of Kiev of certain years where whatever came together, the 4 or 5 people who were doing training hand balance at the time, they just push themselves to reach that next level, which other schools just can't get into.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like it's. I mean, it is known for being the best school for hand balancing, and it's for a reason. I mean, it's them and it's China essentially. Yeah. In terms of like pushing that kind of raw technical, physical skill, and yeah, I do think that kind of the environment like plays a large role in like is that I've seen in many places. It's like, even remember that in breaking, like back in like the early 2000s, where like Scandinavian breakers in general, like they were really influenced by like certain styles, and they were all like pretty good dancers. They had a lot of kind of like versatility and like musicality and stuff, but no one, like for example power moves, it was very weak, like especially in Norway. Like there are very few that could kind of like, as in,
They're all too tall maybe in Norway for power moving.
no, but like actually a couple of the best guys were actually tall, but like you'd see just like France exploded, everyone could air flare. Like Norway, you had like two guys, and you just see in these clicks where kind of something normalizes, then that kind of becomes the norm, and that kind of makes, I don't know if it makes it seem easier or so, but
it's just, I think it does make it seem easier. It's like it's say just to what's been blown up, like Diablo. So Diablo juggling is a kind of like a giant yo-yo on a string, and when I was learning Diablo back, I don't know, 20 years ago, like no one could do 3. It just wasn't the thing. And then someone figured out the technique to start 3, and then I was one of the first people, like the first 10 in the world to do it, along with these other kind of crew of people. And that was the kind of new norm for thing. But I've kind of started going back and looking at what's around now. But now, like all the kids, like 14, 15, they're doing 4 Diablos, they're doing 5, they're doing tricks with 4, they're doing tricks with 5. And it's just like, but someone pointed out, like they came into the level when 3 was kind of the norm. Like obviously expanding on technique, but it was just like everyone done 3. So they go, oh, well, 3 is the normal, I'll get that quick. And then like, okay, to push it, they have to push the 4 and 5. So it's kind of, if you walk into a room where like everyone does presses, everyone does one arms, and you're willing to stick it out in that room, it becomes the norm. If you don't really know much, this is the other thing, if you don't really know much about what came before, either the history of the skill or how long these people go, you just will raise to that level.
Yeah.
There's kind of, sorry, just to talk over you, but this level of physical empathy as well, which people kind of neglect, that we, on a very subconscious level, we learn by watching people and replicating. Our bodies have a very good sense of this. It's very like, goes down to, you know, assessing threats of danger and stuff like this, but it can be coerced into dance as well. Like, it's one of these theories about why people like watching dance performance, stuff like this, because you get your body kind of replicates the physical sensation it's feeling, so you get to experience the dance by watching.
It's kind of sub-communication in a sense.
Yeah. But whereas everyone has like very good technique in the room, then you have this level of physical empathy going on where like suddenly you'll sort of find things working for reasons you can't.
Yeah, like it's
the same. Like I actually get the same thing whenever we train together. Like every single time we train together, my technique jumps up. I remember the first workshop we took together. So Mikael was teaching in Berlin. I knew about him from gymnastics bodies, and we were about posting there and this kind of thing. I was like, okay, we've got to go to this. And I don't think I was even training hand balance at that time.
No, but I remember you had a good pike looking at toes handstand.
Yeah, but like I think that was like, besides just playing around with it a bit in circus school, like the head on chin subset wasn't really a big subset in circus space in the hand balance syllabus. And you were just like, oh, try this. And I was like, nailed it for like a good 20-30 seconds, like multiple times. And I was just like, oh, cool. But I think it was like a lot of it was just like, okay, Mikael's in the room. Okay, cool. He's a legend. Okay, better bring my A game.
Yeah, like it's fascinating, this entire thing of like the kind of normalizing of skills and of like I think of course like there are certain like various driving forces of this, of course, like that yeah, you just see what is kind of the normal, and you think, okay, yeah, this is just what everyone does. Like kind of course I'm going to do it. And this is something that, like, if we kind of start speaking a little bit about more like personal practice and the training aspect of it, and like if training effectively, I think that there are a couple of things there that like, for example, with one-arm handstands. If you go into a circus school, everyone and their dog is doing a one-arm handstand. You start training there, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, the one-arm straddle. That's just the basic thing. That is kind of the what you will internalize. It's like, okay, that's just normal. That's just whatever. And you start training, and then you don't put the move on a pedestal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you don't look upon it as this, like, oh wow, this is so hard, this is so crazy. And because whenever you do that, like, you will always respect the move too much. You will kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready, rather than just trying. And like, you end up trying enough times, and like, because you can brute force a one arm, like, and not just by brute strength, but you can, if you try enough times standing on one arm, but in the end you'll be able to stand on one arm. Like, it'll suck, and your body won't be efficient, and you might waste a lot of time, but it's possible. But
see breakdancing, all those dudes who are doing one arms with,
yeah,
I'd say not
That was
even
me.
technique, like negative technique.
Yeah.
Yet they're still doing it.
yeah, exactly, and you can. So it's like making sure that like you don't like, and I see this a lot with internet, because there's a lot of discussion of like, you have to perfect this and you have to basic that and return to basics, and then you need to do more basics, and you need to have this many seconds of this and this many seconds of that.
Of basics and the quantification of it.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny, because the best hand balancers I've seen developing through the years that I've been active, including myself, have just been people that, oh shit, yeah, I want to learn this thing, I'm just going to try doing it, and I'll just try a billion times. And of course, like, I was in circus school under Sasha Alexander Gavrilov, who's a Russian teacher, so he would be telling me technically if I was bending my legs or doing things wrong, so I got to hear it, but I wasn't going to be like, oh, I need to perfect exactly all of this before I feel ready to move on. I would be just trying to do everything. I was working on one arm switches and blocks like the first year. I was training all the tricks, because I just thought, okay, I need to practice them all, and I learned them. And I've seen people after myself as well who have done a similar approach. A couple of guys that are now like absolutely crazy good, who just like, remember this one guy, like he had like a kind of a meh one arm, but like he was trying to jump on block and switch arms, and he wasn't ready at all. But I was just like, actually not going to tell him, because he's working on his form in class, and it's just getting better. And by the time he can actually stand really solid on both of these hands, he has jumped 5,000 times. Of course, he was 17 at the time, so he had just like the full power capacity, and like he had like, I wouldn't have said the same to a 40-year-old, but lo and behold, that guy is like a superhero on jumping. Like, I think he jumps upstairs on one arm on canes at this point. It's like, it can really work. And
an interesting thing on the environment there, that if you'd gone into him and said, no, you're not ready for this at some point, then maybe he would have like not done those 5,000 jumps, or like waited and not be the monster beast he is.
That's the thing. Like, if we come up to him and it's like, yeah, you know, like you're not ready for this, you need to train this and then that and then this, and being too kind of like put him down too much. Like, yeah, I think he would have respected it too much. And of course, they're like, this is not saying that you shouldn't do basics. Of course, like all these things need to be really good. But in that situation, I just saw that, okay, with the energy levels of this guy, that's what he needs to do. And it really works, because then you just try to do the thing that you do, or that you want to do. And
it's one of the secrets of coaching, I think, the jump to coaching, is to know when not to say something. There's always infinite cues you can give someone, but knowing just to go like, okay, that's just going to get better with time, or it's not important to give this cue right now.
Yeah,
it's one of the things the internet could learn. It's just like, that's great, keep trying, see you later.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is
not.
I've also seen people on the opposite end of the spectrum who've been like over analyzing their one arm, and every time they fall, but I was a bit soft in my hip, and I felt this and I felt that and I felt this. But just stop feeling, just stand on your fucking arm, just deal with balance, concentrate on staying up there. Over time you'll get the sensation, over time you'll be more detailed with it. But like, if you consequently analyze every little second you're up there, you're just like wasting that mental energy that you need to spend on the balancing, on itsy bitsy micromanaging, kind of like one person I've seen like doing a lot of classes with another teacher, and there's a goal, like every time I go down, it's like, oh yeah, but now this and but now that, and like as if like you're literally trying to write a book with all the various sensations. And it's not always necessary, because you just need to get up there. And
sensation wanking. Sensation wanking.
Sensation wank. Like, yeah, that's a good word.
They just spend too long focusing on sensations.
Yeah.
But like, it's the kind of the opposite end of like when you develop the microscope to be able to look into the body and read the catalog of sensations that's presented every moment, and then you will label some of them as like correct sensation, bad sensation, but maybe your labeling is wrong. Like this is the kind of thing you're like, oh, I felt my knee bend and that caused me to fall out. I was like, well, maybe you were off balance already, and then your knee bent in response. So it begins to get the obsessiveness of what happens can be positive, but it can also be negative.
Yeah, and like it's easy to create a backwards logic there, simply also because you, as you said, like certain things in your body will happen as a consequence rather than being the reason for you falling, for example. And these are the things that like technique and setup and so on are like proactive things. You make a decision like, okay, this is how I'm going to try to do it, while the balancing, and if you speak about like the mindset of balancing is reactive. Like there is nothing you can do cognitively thinking yourself from an out of balance place to an into balance place. This is something your body does, and you need to allow your general mind state to be blank enough to let the body do. So to take a perfect example of this, it's just like stand on 2 feet, have your friend stand behind you and ask them to push you in the back at like a random moment. So what's going to happen is like you're going to fly forwards, like maybe fast or slow, or maybe they won't push you so hard that you won't fall, but you have no time or there's nothing cognitively you can do to regain balance. But unless that person pushes you too hard, you're going to find back your balance. Maybe you take 2 steps, maybe you just like push your chest goes forwards and your hip goes backwards. Body knows exactly what to do, and you need to let the body try to do this again and again and again and again and again, so that it will develop a registry. It develops a strength required to catch in a handstand when you're falling out, but it is ultimately a reactive capacity that you can't think yourself to. And
it's this idea that we call the fight. That like particularly when you're learning 2 arm, 1 arm, even a headstand, it doesn't matter, that you have to have this mindset that I'm just going to fight, and it's the intent to stay on balance makes the body go like, okay, this is what we're doing. I will solve the problem of the constraints you've implied of like not move the hands by trying to do something with the torso, something with the legs, something with the shoulder that will maintain it on this point. And it's a very important mindset to develop. Whereas if you spend too long analyzing why every micro mistake, you're forgetting the important thing. Is like put the mind on something that it can pay attention to, fight, and then just let the body do it and just almost ignore the sensations.
The interesting thing is like just deciding, like you being determined to stay on your hands as you kick up is more than enough. That is what you're looking for, because when that is done enough times, like your body's figuring this out, and like trust that the body is a really, really, really intelligent mechanism that'll figure this out. As we said before, you can brute force the handstand. Try enough times and it'll work. Yeah, but if you try it with the correct setup, like good strengthening work, alignment and technique, you don't need as many attempts, like even close to as many attempts. So it'll be going to be a lot more efficient. But the balancing thing, no one can teach you. It's your body reacting to the forces constantly, and that can only kind of happen if you allow that kind of a blankness to be present. And like mind state way, or like kind of mindset wise as well, let's say working on alignment, like let's say you do that with a wall, which is a really good thing. It's like you set up by a wall, you don't need to worry about balance. You don't need to be blank. It's proactive. You go upside down, your feet is on the wall. Okay, what do I need to do? Yeah, first of all, I point my toes. Now they're pointed. I tense my thighs. I squeeze my butt. Okay, I need to push my shoulders high and I need to look at the floor. Okay, how does this feel? And you can even like relax and tense and do this several times over, since like you don't need to react to anything because you're not in balance, but you can get the sensation of this, how this is, and then slowly but surely, as you get comfortable with doing this in free space or in balance by the wall or whatever, you start implementing that into the balance as well. And it doesn't mean that when you go into your first balances, you shouldn't think at all about the technique, because you'll need it to set yourself up close enough to be able to do any balancing work. But it's just that like they they don't correlate, these two things, in terms of technique and the actual balance. And I think the funny thing is that so let's just imagine that you take just a random person. Let's say we take a CrossFitter, someone who's pretty strong, has some decent pushing strength overhead, maybe not the most flexible shoulders, but has like general capacity, and is able to maybe stand on her hands, maybe walk on her hands to a certain degree. That person will maybe not find this perfect trapezius pushing straight arm handstand to be the most efficient position for them at that point in time. And the reason for that is simply that I look upon efficiency as being kind of it's a subjective matter. Of course, there are certain things that allow you to go much further with the vocabulary, and hence these kind of the straight technique for handstands and so on. But for that person at that time, that is how the body solves the puzzle. Let's say the person bends his arms a bit so that he can use the kind of triceps and work on the chest and stuff to help him with balance and to hold himself up, because that's where he has power. That's where he has something to work with. And I think this is an important thing to kind of consider when you're learning this, that of course you want to attain and work towards a quote unquote high level of skill, relative to where you want to go with it, but that you try to correct the technique and so on. But you need to be working from where you are at and with the body you have. And if you don't compromise the technique at any point whatsoever, then you're basically going to end up with what they do in a lot of high-level sports. You're going to come to a point where sorry, mate, you're not cut out for being the best. Go home. That is what's going to happen. While, if you're not doing this for sports, and even professional circus aren't really doing it for sport, there are no criteria, there are no code of points. Yeah. So why is it then so judgmental? And this is something I find kind of fascinating with hand balancing. Why do we need to judge it so hard? I'm I don't like this technique, I don't like that person's technique.
I think people judge it so harsh because you're generally always dealing with a static image, and it's very easy to assess a static image. A static shape is okay, I can go through the details, where if you I don't know, say we took a soccer player and he was running to get a ball, it's very difficult to assess someone's running gait when they're running at speed unless you really know what you're doing. So you're not going to go that soccer player, he's running and his stride length is slightly uneven and his arm swing needs a bit of help. Maybe if a running coach you could spot this. Whereas hand balance, because it's so slow, a lot of people end up thinking I can tell what's going on and I can tell their internal process from this static image they presented or a static video. So it kind of is this speed of assessment where people go so it's very, I don't know, it's very tick the box in terms of what is good and what is bad.
Yeah, and the positions are also kind of they use very clear kind of geometry, which kind of makes it becomes easy for almost anyone to spot whether or not the kind of correctness is there, depending on okay, the person does a pike handstand. Is the legs exactly level with the floor? Are the knees straight? Are the lines clean looking? You know what I mean? These things are very, they're easy, as you say, they're easy to spot. And since you stay in the position for some time, it becomes easy to see. And then it becomes easy to kind of see those flaws then. Yeah. And I think that it's also then mindset wise, it's very easy to start only focusing on those flaws or judging from this kind of paradigm of perfection. And it's not always it's very funny as well. If you look into kind of circus arts and the people that I find to do the most interesting and unique stuff, they often do very different things, strange things. And it's Imogen Hustle is, for example, a very good example of that. If you don't know who she is, you should check her out. She has a lot of very strange shapes and interesting different things, which come from her perspective and her way of viewing what she does. But there are tons of different styles, and I appreciate also kind of the straight, clean technique. I do a lot of that, and I kind of love these certain moves that I do, but it's fascinating that a discipline such as circus that ultimately wants to present something unique and personal, something that is then makes you stand out from the rest of people that do what you do.
Yeah.
You end up like chasing down the same corridor of like only this hierarchy of difficulty and nothing else. Like how deep is your Mexican? How perfectly level is your flag? How long did you hold your legs together, arm up position? And so on and so on and so on. And like you just like, I found myself when looking at like handstand acts on YouTube, I just like skip through to see what tricks they did and done with it, because like there was so little else to see. And I think that also comes from like, if you flip it a little bit back to the things we started talking about, like how much time and effort you put into this practice, so that like you spend so much time mastering that like flag of yours and that like position of yours, that like that is all you can think about.
Yeah, I think it could almost be compared to classical music, where in classical music it's like you have these people who are virtuosic at their instrument, have possibly been playing since age 4 or 5, gone through all the school, all the thing, and now they're playing in an orchestra, and they're just playing someone's music and they're trying to basically almost, no, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a lot of variance in orchestras and in composing, conducting, but they're still trying to almost replicate this piece of music that was written 400 or 500 years ago. And trying to see can they come as close to perfection as possible in this. And it's kind of, you get that a bit in hand balance. It's like, I'm going to get these 10 shapes and I'm going to make them as close to perfection as possible. And it's kind of, possibly it's that it's not even a perfectionist, there's definitely perfectionists, but it appeals to that like the ephemeral quality of perfection that you can touch it sometimes, but you can't. There's always going to be a tiny flaw you can find in your thing, and like you might be doing one arm and I've held it longer than I have, and my toes were clean and my legs were clean and my shape was clean and everything was working, but then you look at the video and you go, oh, but at 5 seconds in I bent my elbow slightly, but I re-straightened it, but I just didn't have that sense of perfection. But there's the other thing is like you ignore everything else which was perfect. So in some ways, when you're assessing yourself, you know, even when you're giving advice on the internet, it's something I have to remind myself to, is say something nice about the person's technique. Yeah. It's
for sure.
It's very easy to be critical. It's very easy to pick the details, but like, you know, someone posts something that's like, you know, you'll post something to one of the internet groups or thing and go, oh, how's my form looking? And everyone will say something bad, and you'll have 10 different things that are bad about your form on that thing, down to the minute thing. Sorry. But very few people will go, oh, you know, that's really good, keep working.
Yeah, I remember like it really struck me once when I saw like some like street workout dude doing a Maltese on the floor. I mean, if you don't know what a Maltese is, it's basically like the steel rings element from gymnastics, where you're
the end boss of the planche game.
Yeah, it's like like a pretty super difficult move. It's kind of like almost a mix between a planche and an iron cross in terms of where you place your body. Like essentially, it is super duper ultra strength requiring. And the Maltese of this guy was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't as good maybe as the best one executed in terms of gymnastics code of points you could see. And someone just like, the only comment is like, hey dude, you're like arching a bit in your Maltese. And I'm just like, the guy's doing a Maltese. Like this is like, this is like one of the highest level elements you could see. And it wasn't just jank either. It wasn't just some like guy who didn't like it. Like it was pretty legit. It was a good Maltese. It wasn't like, he might have gotten a little bit of a
quarter mark deduction.
Yeah, he would have gotten a deduction in the Olympics, but hey, you'll also see a lot of like the best gymnasts, unless they're fully on point, they might do a little bit of that too. But that's the thing, that like these kind of disciplines, and when they're treated with these very specific criteria that you need to follow, then as you said, it becomes very easy to see all these flaws rather than this was pretty good. And it also leads me to think about this fact of like, we mentioned this before in terms of technique, but like that technique is an artificial construct that we come up with, like certain aesthetical and like mechanical parameters we want to line up in a specific fashion, and then we kind of judge it based upon that. But we need to remember is that like human bodies aren't the same. Like there are joint structure differences, there are muscle insertion differences. Some people lack certain muscles, some people have fusions of certain muscles. There's a million things that are going on. And I was speaking to my friend who is he's an orthopedic surgeon, and he said like I'd ask him always about like, yeah, but what about these muscles and that muscles, I'm interested. And he's like, when you open people up, it doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like the anatomy chart. It's a total mess, he says. You cut them open, and then like there's just like the tissues are fused, and you don't know what you're looking at, and why is this thing here, and like it's always a puzzle to get through and like do like, because he does like a lot of hip replacement, so he kind of just explains like, yeah, if you know the name of that thing you're looking at, just try not to cut there, try to find somewhere else. Of course,
precision here.
Yeah, of course, jokingly, but. Essentially this, that like we need to consider that what might be perfect technique for me might not be for another person. And a great example also of this is stuff like hyperextended elbow. Like people have said to me, for example, yeah, but you need to put your head closer to your arm. And when I've tried to put my head significantly closer to my arm, what happens due to the width of my shoulders and the fact I don't have any hyperextension on my elbow is that my shoulder sinks out to the side and my balancing is extremely inefficient. Whereas someone else with either then another shoulder structure perhaps or a hyperextended elbow can have a different placement. And doesn't mean that my one arm is worse than that person. It just means
No, it's objectively worse.
We're just dealing with like different bodies, and I just think it's so important to just take into account that like at one point you'll need to adapt this technique to your body and not only adapt the body to the technique, because you might just end up either just hitting a brick wall. And I know many people that have kind of like bought this narrative of having to do it exactly this way or it's wrong, and they just end up getting very little done because it might not correlate or work with a certain person. And I've worked with many students like that. One guy, like, he had to twist his hip on when he went on his left arm, and regardless of the things I saw him try and I tried and I gave him advice, maybe try this, try that, like, nothing worked, because when he didn't twist in that direction on that arm, he would fall. I can't explain why, but he can stand really, really, really well on that arm when he allows that twist to happen. Should that make him feel like a bad person? No, he can stand really well on that arm.
Yeah, it's this thing.
Looks good too.
Yeah, it's kind of like you have to try as hard as you can to reach the technical constraints of what you're doing, but we also have to remember the technical constraints are there to express an internal principle. So it's like alignment is actually an internal principle that expresses in a straight line, because that's the cleanest way to express it. So at some points, like, you might have to adapt the technique to your body, and sometimes it can be much earlier. Like, there's some people I know just, they're never going to be able to get a perfectly straight handstand due to the way previous shoulder injuries and stuff like that. Whereas they can still express the principles of a straight line and balance and control what will come with it. It's just their shoulders, like, you'd have to, the technique I'd advise them to use is the old school Chinese technique, where it was very flat up until the thoracic spine, then has a bit of an arch, and then the shoulder can remain a bit closed. And people nowadays, if you show them a picture of this technique, will go, oh, that's terrible. Then if you show them, well, here's one person doing a one arm on a slack wire while spinning rings on fire and everything else, and then I go, well, you cannot argue that they cannot achieve technical and elite level mastery.
No,
just because they haven't got this thing. So it's always that idea of educated experimentation. I like people go, like, with clients I like to say there's nothing really wrong, but you have to know why you're doing it and have chosen to do it. That's kind of one of the things I want people to do. Is like, oh, I'm bending my back in my tuck handstand. Do you know you're bending your back? Yeah, I do. Did you choose to do it? Yeah, okay, cool. Could you close and straighten the back out? Not yet, but I know how to do it. I know how to work on it. Fine, I'm happy with that. It's not. It's this thing. I want people to be consistent and enjoy the practice, but also not enjoy it too much, to the point that they keep coming back and do it. And if we start as coaches putting in too much, this is good, this is bad, you'll have a lot of people who just will quit or just get frustrated, increase frustration. There's kind of a frustration threshold that eventually you'll just go, you know what, I'm just too frustrated and I'm sick of it. Particularly once we begin to get, there's kind of like this level when you get past the beginner stage, like even when you can't do a 2-arm handstand, but you feel you get better at the wall drills, your shoulders get more flexible, you feel it's a bit easier, then you start getting this success of balancing. And then there's this kind of zone where you're like, oh, you get up to 30-40 seconds, you're like, okay, I got this, then you start doing some shapes. But there's this kind of dead zone from about 40 seconds and learning the shapes where things get better, but it's very slow. Progress is slow from that point onwards. And it's kind of like, if you're expecting to make progress every single session, it's not going to happen.
That's a really it's a really good thing to touch upon in terms of practice and mindset too. Like if you want to increase your overall level of happiness with having
don't do hand balancing.
Well, like basically just make sure that you zoom out when you look at your progress curve, zoom out, like, because very little happens in a week, very little happen in a couple of months, but like over like maybe 3, 6, 8, 10 months, a couple of years, then you'll start seeing like some significant changes. And now, of course, you can even compare this to certain things, such as like if you go into the gym day one, you've never lifted a weight before, and you expect to lift loads more next week, it likely won't happen. But like give yourself 7 months and you'll likely be lifting significantly more if you kept consistency with the practice. So of course there's much more parameters into hand balancing practice than just lifting a weight off the floor, but there is like you can have a consistency of of improvement, but you really need to look upon it from a zoomed out perspective, because you'll also have these kind of, since there's so many things that will influence how you balance, since one thing is fatigue and strength and all of that, and one will maybe be like focus and concentration. Like there's probably tons of just like neurochemical various reasons why some days you're sharp on your balancing and some days not. Like I can still remember one of the best training sessions I've ever had in my entire life was when I lived in Copenhagen. I had slept barely nothing, and I took everything. I was just like, ugh, this sucks, and I don't know what to do. I didn't eat breakfast. I was like, God damn it. I just found some noodles, and I ate them. It was like, I went to it was one of these like buffet places where they had some like Thai food. And it wasn't like the food was kind of bad. Like it was not very warm. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just eat some. Went to the circus hall, had a coffee, and I just absolutely destroyed it for like 5 hours in a row. I was on super fire. So where did this come from? Huh?
MSG.
Yeah, probably just like hyped up on that. But it, like you can have this like very high degree of variance in the practice, and like if you at least know that there are sometimes you're going to be so amped for your session and ready to kill it, and like you go in and woohoo, everything feels great, and then you just end up like a miserable pile on the floor and you can't do anything and you have no idea why. It is going to happen, and that is okay.
I think it's the main takeaway from this is to have success in hand balance, regardless of what level you're aiming to. Be it just I want to do a 2-arm, I want to do a thing, tucks, I want to do shapes, I want to press, I want to get 1 arm, I want to perform. The number one variable I think you have to optimize your training for is consistency. You have to find the strategies that will make you be consistent, do the training, you'll get involved, you get annoyed, but be able to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
It's kind of the main takeaway from this, I suppose. I think we've been going for about an hour and 20.
Yeah, it's a pretty long one actually. So
it's a long one, I think. Yeah, so I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah, loads of things to say about this, but
I suppose you could probably come back and do another episode on this exact topic of mindset.
Yeah, I mean, if there's specific things that you'd like to hear about, like either mindset in terms of like training or performing or whatnot, that is also things that you can let us know. And send us a message either on like Handstand Factory on Instagram, Emmet Lewis, or Mikael Balancing on Instagram, and
take it there. If you're interested in learning how to hand balance, we have our course on Handstand Factory. It can take you all the way from 0 to hero on those.
0 to hero.
We can give you the technical information. You have to bring the consistency. No guarantee on the consistency. Other than that, thanks for listening to us, and hopefully we'll meet up at some point.